Next on BYUSN, is BYU football better than a 5-win team next season? Who set the mark at 5? And the nation's leading rebounder, Lauren Gustin, is in studio. We'll show her deep blue as well. Apparently, it's a Lauren Gustin show. Welcome to BYUSN, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. I am Spencer Linton. Joining us in just a moment, Jarom Jordan. On today's show, we revisit some of ESPN statman Bill Connolly's projection from yesterday's show. Yeah, he's the guy that said BYU, based on the numbers, number 62 in his SP Plus, is pacing for 5 wins. Are the Cougars better than a 5-win team? And he says the key to getting better than 5 wins probably requires an uptick on offense. Lauren Gustin, we just mentioned her. She is in studio. She's breaking records seemingly by the game. And we have a Deep Blue special with her as well. Also, relatable carpet basketball. What the heck does that mean? We'll explain. And the biggest miracle in Cougar sports history. Plus, Jackson Emery has ideas for Danny Ainge and the Utah Jazz. Here are today's headlines. And they begin with Fousseyni Traore of BYU men's basketball and Emma Calvert of BYU women's basketball named to their respective CSC academic all-district teams. Those squads recognize the nation's top student athletes for their combined performances on the court and in the classroom. You know who also is great on the court and in the classroom? Jarom Jordan!
No, I was neither of those, court or classroom. Baseball begins its second series of the season today, a 4-game series against the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns with radio coverage on BYU Radio's app tonight, 7 Eastern Time. Shep on the call doing his tour of the Bayou.
BYU men's tennis earning singles and doubles Players of the Week honors. Dominik Yakovlevich named the WCC men's tennis singles player of the week. Jack Barnett and Mateo Verreau named the doubles team of the week. Well done to all of those gentlemen.
And to gymnastics, beam specialist Elise Rollins is a nominee for the AAI award presented to the nation's most outstanding senior. She's having a fantastic season.
She is a super senior, but not that type of super senior, like an actual senior that is super in
Yeah, like
craft.
I was here a second senior year academically. Not that kind. She's much better.
So, fun story about Elise before we get into trending. Her head coach, Gard Young, says she is the Rudy of BYU women's gymnastics.
Yes. There's a Deep Blue coming out a couple of weeks ago. It will chronicle some of that story, which is pretty cool. So congratulations to Elise, who also happens to be a Copper Hills Grizzly.
Okay. Now that's why we're casting the extra spotlight.
Absolutely.
All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending. Give me that, Chase Roberts. Love that touchdown catch. What's Trending presented by Bodyguards, protection for a life worth living. Learn more at bodyguards.com. A 5-win season? Yikes.
No.
Bill Connolly, statsman, great dude, friend of the program, joined us yesterday and gave us some great insights. Based on his projections, I asked him, what does number 62 in the SP Plus mean in terms of a win-loss record? And he said, well, it equals 5 wins based on my numbers. Jarom, is BYU better than a 5-win team next season going into the Big 12?
We'd like to think so, Spence. 5 won't cut it. Bowl game, always the minimum threshold. We'll never be like, you know what, 4-8 was good. No.
Can you imagine?
5-7, unacceptable.
Not 4-8. Yeah.
Not for this program. Now, Utah, when it went into the Pac-12, went 5-7 2 of the first 3 years. They were 8-5 that second year. BYU's better suited to enter the Big 12 than Utah was in the Pac-12 because BYU's played independence and played these schedules that at the time I thought were too tough for no reason. Well, when you're entering the Big 12, you're ramping up, right? And BYU the last couple of years has played some tough schedules. They weren't Big 12 schedules. They weren't Power 5 schedules, but they were as hard as they could be without being an actual Power 5 team because as an independent, BYU could play the schedule it wanted. It played tough schedules. They weren't a Mountain West schedule like the past where you play 2 or maybe 3 P5s max in a season. BYU was playing up to 7 some years, 5 and 6 the last couple, right? I think, like we've talked about, I've said, hey, if BYU makes a bowl game, that was a good first year. You've said, hey, 7 and 5, right? 5 would not be acceptable. So that's what Bill's projecting. But the great unknown, and there's lots of unknown going into next season on offense in particular with some of the primary playmakers. And Keaton Slovis, of course, at quarterback. Can he be 2019 USC Keaton Slovis in this offense? And with his health, his shoulder's good, his back's good. Aiden Robbins out of UNLV expected to be RB1. It's really the defense to me, Spence. We don't exactly know how much better BYU will be, but I guarantee it, you'll like the way the defense looks, is that BYU is going to look better. New defensive coordinator with Jay Hill, new staff. They probably can't be much worse. That's not to offend anybody on the BYU defense. They just haven't been very good the last 2 years.
A defense that's ranked basically 100th out of 130-plus teams, not great.
No thanks. 79 in SP Plus defensively 2 years ago, 95th last year. We're just asking for top half. We're asking for top 60 probably. And if the offense is what it has been the last couple years, which is, hey, top 50, top 40-ish, then yes, BYU should exceed that 5-win number. But they've got to do it. They have to go out and do it against the toughest schedule, BYU's had in a while in terms of, not in terms of perhaps quality, because you could argue there are some years in the past, even in the Mountain West, where BYU played some real quality teams, non-conference, you stack them up, you're like, hey, number 1 USC has been on the schedule, number 5 so-and-so. It's top to bottom. This is the toughest schedule in BYU history because 10 P5.
100%. I want to play a couple of sound bites from yesterday's conversation with Bill, beginning with exactly what he said about BYU being a 5-win team.
The average win total that I'm looking at right now is around 5. Big variation in potential here, though, because not a lot of sure losses. You got the extremely likely wins at the start. Not a ton of sure losses. Just a lot of games where BYU is a slight underdog.
And that's why I love that he clarified it in that way. It's not as simple as just, 5 wins, but there are so many games on the schedule that he is projecting will be close games. He later specified a home game against Texas Tech, a home game against Iowa State. Those games, if they swing BYU's favor, then very quickly BYU is a 6 or 7 win team. He also pointed out the home game against Cincinnati. Yeah. Those are all going to be so closely contested, at least by the numbers going in, that if BYU can win some of those games, then again, we're talking about, bowl eligibility or a 7-win team.
Or even 8. If one-score games are a big deal, Spence. Like, when you look at the seasons where BYU had some real success, they won a lot of those close games. TCU unbelievably played a ton of close games and won all of them but one, and then they had a blowout in the national title game, of course. But, you have to win tight games. Last year, BYU wins in overtime against Baylor. They lose a one-score game against Notre Dame. Yeah. They lose a one-score game against ECU. They win a one-score game at Boise State. They win a one-point game against SMU. Those swing a season. It's really important to pull off tight wins. Now, you can make games not one-score game by being terrible or being better, by putting the pedal down, by beating a team by multiple scores.
Yeah, what if a few of those games that BYU played in that ended in wins swing the other way? Now we're talking about a 6-7 team.
Yeah.
It's very a totally different rhetoric.
Or a 9-3 team in the regular season if you beat Notre Dame.
That's a credit to BYU for winning the majority of those close games last year and what feels like the majority of those games in the recent years. So, that's a good trend for BYU to have. Can they keep it in the Big 12? And I, like you, tend to think, well, clearly BYU's defense just needs to be better to help win some of those close games.
Yeah.
But I asked Bill again, all right, based on the numbers, where do you think BYU could beat the statistics and the projections going in? This is what he said.
So I can see, the projected 42nd. I could see a top 30 offense coming out of that. And like I said, if you can exceed projections just a little bit, that could pay off with a number of that could tip a number of close games overall.
Now, Jarom, he said, look, I know Jay Hill's coming in. and I think that BYU's defense could be better, but I feel more
It better be better.
I feel more confident that BYU's offense would exceed expectations than the defense exceeding expectations. So he's putting more trust in Keaton Slovis and Aiden Robbins and all the guys you just talked about a few moments ago, the receivers.
Yeah.
The offensive line has some spots to fill, but there's still a core group there led by Connor Pay and Kingsley Suamataia.
And Paul Miley comes in on that O-line, which is
there's experience there. Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting that he leans toward the offense, which is, hey, 42nd is not terrible. That's top third of college football.
I'd be okay with that in the Big 12 in year one. I really would.
But he says 82nd for defense.
That's his projected end-of-year number?
Yeah.
Is that what he's saying?
Can BYU be better than that? I just want top half. Give me 66.
Top 60, 66,
great.
sure. Repeating, of course.
Right in the middle. Give me 66, and if BYU even holds at his projection on offense of 42, then they're going to win 7 games.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and here's where the argument comes down to. The unknown of Jay Hill as a D1 coordinator versus the known of Aaron Roderick as a D1 coordinator, and what is Keaton Slovis? What is Aiden Robbins? And so on and so forth. Offensively, Aaron Roderick is one of the most proven OCs in the game right now. The last couple of years, BYU's been tremendous. Look back at last year. You think about the offense and what they did or didn't do in certain times. EPA, expected points added, that defines the value of each play on the likelihood to score. This is an emerging metric in football. BYU was 19th offensively in EPA last year. 17th in offensive success rate. That is, you get a certain percentage of yards on a certain down towards a first down, right? BYU 17th. And that was 22. 21 was really good. 20 was even better. Granted, 20 is a big asterisk year, right? Given the schedule, BYU did great with what they could. The last 3 years, Aaron Roderick has done awesome stuff. He's producing NFL quarterbacks. BYU is putting up points. They're in the metrics that matter. They're doing good things. Obviously, there's room for improvement. We talked about it ad nauseum. Defensively, BYU was 112 in EPA.
Yikes.
Just really, really bad. I believe the offense is going to be better than expected.
Okay.
If it's 42, I think they'll be top 40. Even in the Big 12, that's the hope.
Even if it's a few spots.
Even if it's a few spots. And let's say they're not. Let's say they're 50th on offense.
Okay.
You're in the Big 12 and playing 10 P5s. It's a different standard. Defensively, BYU's got to be
you can't be 95th again.
Notably better.
You can't be 95th again.
You've got to improve 20 or 30 spots to be in a bowl situation. Now, here's the thing. BYU's entering the Big 12. The thing with Big 12 ball has always been, it feels like the last couple of years, it's going to be shootouts, okay? So the defense, some of those numbers against a tougher schedule and style of play, because let's be honest, BYU's built more like a Big 10 team than a Big 12 team, meaning speed on the perimeters, secondary, chase them, outscore them. And not to say BYU hasn't done that in a couple of years, but BYU has a physical, big offensive line, quality run game, doesn't turn it over. Like BYU is more like a Big 10 team traditionally the last couple of years. This isn't the 80 where BYU's throwing for 400 yards a game. You know what I mean? Like,
no, we want it to be that.
That is what the Big 12 is most of the time. Not every team is that way. They have some good ground games still. But, like, BYU is going to have to win multiple games where they give up 30-plus a game. Multiple games. Like Toledo 2016, going to happen a little more than you think. But it's fun. It's entertaining visually. But the defense is going to stress the heck out.
Now, I'm sure some of you are like, okay, well, does the SP Plus really resonate? Does it really matter? I just want to go back over the past 3 seasons and where BYU started and where they finished in this metric.
Yeah.
In 2020, and again, this is with an asterisk because the schedule got wiped out and BYU played who they could play. Their toughest opponents were Houston, Boise State, and UCF.
Coastal, I would argue, was
Coastal was also a good team.
Coastal was the toughest opponent.
Okay. 2020, BYU started at number 53 in the SP Plus. They finished number 7. Really good.
BYU was one of the best teams in the country in 2020 by the metrics.
2021, 10-3, 5-0 against the Pac-12. Started number 52 because they lost Zach Wilson and Dax Milne, 5 draft picks.
Yep.
They finished 46th. So a 6-spot jump was still good enough to give BYU 10 wins on the season. It's not everything. It's not a top 25 ranking.
But it's something.
It's something. There's still some improvement from where they were projected.
I value SP Plus more than I do any ranking.
I agree. It's a metric that matters a lot to me.
Yes. It's not an opinion poll. It's based on data.
It is a quality efficiency metric for offense and defense and special teams and returning production and all that. 2022, BYU starts number 23. So we're all feeling good.
Super high.
Number 1 in the country in returning production.
Yeah.
They finished number 70, a 47-spot drop to 8-5. Bill joked yesterday, he's like, BYU broke the metric. They beat the system.
Somehow they
in
went
the wrong way.
BYU is supposed to go 5-8 with those numbers, probably.
Yeah, weird, right?
You win a couple close games.
Start number 62. If BYU finishes, let's say they do what the 2021 squad did, and they just finish +6. They finish 56. Defense is somewhere in the low 70s. Offense is around 40. They're a bowl team, and they're getting better again. So that's what I am expecting BYU to do. I don't know which side of the ball is going to be better. We both hope that it's defense and in a major way.
Well, overall or above expectation?
Based on this expectation, I hope the defense, again, middle of the pack, 66.
This is BYU. I always hope the offense is better.
And the offense
every year
at 42, we're hoping that they're a top 40 offense.
Yeah.
Is that too much? Is that too much to hope
I think
for?
in the Big 12, you want your offense to be better than your defense. Because you're going to have to outshoot some people.
I don't hate that idea.
Yeah. And this is BYU. What we do is offense. It's what we do. But defensively, BYU's had some really skilled players and some really good defense over the years as well.
Here's a question to think about. Maybe we'll answer this in the whip. What's more likely, for BYU to be a top 30 offense next season, year 1 of the Big 12, or to win 5 games and go the opposite direction? Okay?
I love it and hate it.
Our question of the day is this. Based on Bill Connolly's projections, is BYU better than a 5-win football team next season?
Please.
Ben Peterson on Twitter says, I believe BYU can get more than 5 wins. It really depends on how well the new quarterback, Keaton Slovis,
100%.
and running back, Aiden Robbins, fit in and play. BYU is going to make the biggest difference, those players are going to make the biggest difference in what kind of season it will be for BYU.
Certainly they are spotlighted in a way that, Ben Bywater and Malik Moore are not. Because they influence the game in a way that those guys can influence. Like Ben's like, I'll just pick 6 it if we need to win this game and get 7 points. Like that helps in that game for sure. But like Aiden Robbins needs to be better than Chris Brooks, and Keaton Slovis needs to be 80% of what Jaron Hall was.
He needs to hold on to the ideal of not turning the ball over, which BYU has really done a nice job with the past few years.
I hope he's that guy. I'm like BYU just produced 2 NFL quarterbacks. Maybe that's part of the reason is that particular metric. But Keaton can do other things that he does well to make up for that.
I'm excited. Blanket statement, generalized. I'm just excited.
We are very excited.
I just want to see this unfold on the field.
And luckily it's happening tomorrow. Oh, wait, it's not. Watch BYU basketball with Mark Pope on demand if you missed it. Coach and Greg Wrubell and the Walk-Ons joined the program last night. It's on demand on BYUSN.com and the BYU TV app.
What's the countdown at? 6 months away from college football.
And a week.
Up next, one-on-one with the top rebounder in the country. Lauren Gustin in studio ahead of 2 huge games to close out the regular season. This is BYU Sports Nation.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Bodyguards. Protection for a life worth living.
Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork offers a large inventory of Ford vehicles, including a selection of cars and trucks, providing a range of transportation choices. From the Ford Fusion sedan and the Edge crossover SUV to a range of pickups including the F-150. Each product line comes with options to enhance performance, comfort, and safety. Think Ford, think Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork.
BYU men's hoops dreams are flying high. But before hitting the hardwoods of the Big 12, they're shooting to leave their royal blue imprint on the courts of the WCC. Join us for BYU Sports Nation Game Day as we chatted up with Coach Pope on the team's growth, dive deep into player profiles, and keep it real on the Cougs' big dance chances. It's time to raise the spirited Y banner on our final tour of the WCC. BYU Sports Nation Game Day. Tune in, join us.
Offensive rebound. Gustin, the putback is good. I'll take, 17 points and 16 rebounds a game. Thank you very much. It is the Lauren Gustin portion of the show now. We are live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU sports play-by-play. Jarom Jordan one-on-one with the nation's top rebounder, Lauren Gustin now.
Always great to have Lauren in studio. How you doing, Lauren?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Did you make it through Snowmageddon across the way from the annex? It's crazy out there today, right?
I know. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, school's going to be interesting today for everybody. Practice, but you guys got to put in that work because you have a huge week with Portland and Gonzaga. You certainly have a chance to, make the best seed you can going into Vegas. Mm-hmm. What does this week mean, given you have the top two teams in the league coming to Provo?
Yeah, like you said, it's huge. I think these two games we've been looking forward to kind of all season, because we had our first conference 2 games, and I feel like at that time we weren't really prepared and, hadn't really come together yet as a team. So I think we're excited to be able to play them again, especially at our home, and kind of have that advantage. And, yeah, hopefully be able to pull off 2 wins going into the tournament. So.
It'd be huge. And I expect the crowds to be huge as well. Come out to the Marriott Center Thursday night, 7 o'clock Mountain Time, Saturday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, both those on BYU TV, of course. That was a weird setup at the beginning of conference play, by the way. A Saturday and a Monday. Certainly playing on a Monday, unique to BYU. You guys don't practice Sunday. It doesn't mean you don't, talk and scheme, but you're not getting out on the court putting up shots. How difficult was that, and how much more prepared do you feel this week, given you are a different team and you have more days to prepare?
Yeah. It definitely was difficult on Sunday. We kind of couldn't really do a whole lot. We walked through some other stuff in the hotel room and went over film. But I feel like this week we're definitely a lot more prepared. We've kind of been able to go back and watch our game against them at the start of the season and be able to kind of reassess what we need to work on. And then, like you said, we have more days to get ready for them. So I feel like we're mentally and physically a lot more prepared.
Portland's got one of the best players in the league, Alex Fowler. Mm-hmm. Is that a matchup that you sort of look forward to, given kind of how similar your games are that way?
Yeah, she's a great player, really smart, really physical, knows the game super well. So, she's also very humble and she works hard. So it's fun to play against someone, that's just really puts in the work. So I'm excited. She's a great player. So
an Australian that didn't go to St. Mary's,
yeah.
One of the rare ones in the league. With a player like that and other players, are you talking during the game with opponents? Like some players do, some players don't. What are you like?
I wish I could talk trash, but
I'm not even talking trash.
Well, yeah,
I'm just saying talking.
Just in general, I wish I could. But I feel like during the game I get so locked into what I need to do that I can't even talk a whole lot. So I'm talking with my girls, but not really a whole lot of conversation with other players. Sometimes on the free throw line we'll just chat about little small things here, but nothing really crazy.
Is it always game centric? Is it ever a funny thing did you see that?
Sometimes sometimes I'll get weird questions about BYU on the free throw line.
From the opponent?
Yeah. Just questions and things they have about BYU, can you swear here? And just stuff like that. Just funny random things.
You're yes, don't get caught.
Just funny things like that.
What else do they ask you?
They ask me if I like BYU.
You're like, no, I hate it.
Yeah, I know. I'm and just kind of the weather and just random things here and there, where we get our shoes or just my favorite thing about camp is just weird stuff like that, mid free throw line. But it's always fun, good conversation.
Does that ever break up sort of the focus there? Because you seem like you said you're focused. You're like, I'm just trying to get a rebound here. I don't want to talk about my Nike whatever.
I think if anything, it kind of relaxes me a little bit, just because sometimes I do get so focused that I'm kind of not really not necessarily not enjoying, but I'm so dialed in that I can't really like breathe for a second. So when like someone asks me a question like that, it's kind of just makes me realize like, oh, we're playing a game. Like,
Yeah. You forget sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We're talking with Lauren Gustin on BYU Sports Nation. Who on the team is the person who, yes, they're still focused, but they are sort of having fun with sort of conversational or funny in the game? Who on the team is sort of that person?
Yeah. I think what's fun about our team is a lot of girls are like that. Like, a lot of us are, having a good time, laughing. But then when the lights come on, like, we're dialed in. I think Smiler's a good example. She's always like dancing and having a good time, but then she can focus up real quick and get, really dialed in. But I think that's one thing I really like about our team is all of us kind of can have that fun time and but also be able to be dialed in when it's time to go. So
I feel like Kaylee Smiler could be the Jamal Williams of
Yeah.
the BYU women's basketball
Yeah.
team, given her ability to dance, which we saw in her debut.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, she's a great dancer. She's always in the weight room too. We're always listening to music, and she's always just throwing in little moves here and there between
Yeah.
sets. So
It's fun to have two Kiwis on the team. There have been a few over the years.
Yeah.
Chalet Salmon comes to mind, among others. How does kind of their New Zealand and specifically Maori culture, does that ever make its way onto the court with the team in any way, in your opinion? Because we kind of saw that in Kaylee's Deep Blue, what her Maori culture means to her.
yeah. I think just everything that Smiler stands for in general just kind of
She's
shows.
Smiler to you guys?
Yeah, we call her Kaylee Smiler. Yeah, I think just kind of shows through her personality. She's a very, I feel like she carries her culture very well, and so she's always like it's fun and a great example to kind of listen to and learn things from her. So her and Ari are both super great people to be around. So yeah, I would say their cultural carries for sure. It's fun to be able to have different cultures and people from different countries and stuff kind of come together. So
Yeah, on the women's team, it's New Zealand. On the men's team, there's 3 players from Africa.
Yeah.
It's cool to have those different
Yeah.
cultures and customs and languages, which is fun. We buried the lead here, but congratulations on setting the
Thank
single
you.
season record in the WCC in rebounding. What did that
Thank
mean
you.
to you?
I mean, it's a great honor. Fortunately, couldn't pull out the win, the day that things happen like that. So, but yeah, no, I'm excited. It's been fun, to, be able to play in the WCC and be able to get that, our last year being here. So.
Did you, before the season, have any specific goals relative to rebounding? Because certainly you've been an awesome rebounder before. You've taken a step forward. Was there a sort of a written goal for you this year to kind of take that next step, or is this just a natural evolution? I
would say the start of this year, Coach Amber had us all kind of write our own personal goals. And one of them for sure was average double-double and to be in the top rebounder. So I didn't necessarily have like 1 or 2 in the top, as far as like listing, but I knew I wanted to kind of be up there. So I think that, it's going, good so far, but I just got to keep it up and just want to get wins at the end of the day. So
If there's ever a game where you don't have like 15 rebounds or something, are you disappointed, or do you look and go, oh, we shot 50%. There were fewer.
Yeah.
Or the other team made some shots
Yeah.
or whatever.
I mean, if we're shooting well, then I'm happy, just whatever that takes. But yeah, I mean, some games when both teams are making, a lot of shots, it's definitely harder to get boards. But if we're shooting well, I'm happy with it. So.
You're 23 rebounds away from the single-season BYU record, which was set by all-timer Tina Gunn Robinson in 1979 and 80. She's walking around campus, so is Danny Ainge at that point. That's how long it's been. 23 rebounds. What would that mean? What will that mean to you when you break that record, perhaps Thursday night, or it seems like Saturday?
Yeah. Well, she's a legend. I feel like she, carries all sorts of records around here. So it's great to be able to compete against someone like that for, a record. I think, breaking it will be exciting. Definitely a big accomplishment, but.
Okay, in your Deep Blue, which we're going to air later in the show, and it came out yesterday, your dad kind of talks about, well, to get in some of the young games with your older brothers and your sister and whatnot, you had to rebound. That was the thing you had to do. Is that where it started for you, where rebounding sort of became a thing that you did well? Yeah,
I would say I think that was like one of the only really ways that I could kind of get in there and compete with them, so I kind of had to. So I think at that age I kind of grew a love for just rebounding and try to contribute in ways that I could to be able to get on the court.
And in the Deep Blue, as you'll see, you've been on quite the journey. Multiple high schools, multiple state titles, Idaho, Salt Lake Community College, BYU. What has it kind of taken for you to get to this point in terms of the adversity you've overcome to get to where you are? Because I think people maybe look and they go, oh, the leading rebounder. Life's maybe been easy for It's been nothing but, it feels like.
Yeah, it's definitely been, up and down, and there's been times where, I was close to giving up and then, kind of kept going, and a whole kind of array of journey that I went through. So I think all those different steps kind of, made me who I am today, and kind of made me appreciate things more and want to, work harder and fight for things more, just because I know that it did take me, a couple different directions to get where I am. But I wouldn't, change it for, really anything, because I feel like if I went straight from high school straight to BYU, I don't know if I would, maybe have the same work ethic or drive or kind of motivation behind that.
And when you say, maybe would have given up, like not play college basketball? Was that an option at some point?
Yeah,
for
no,
you
definitely.
eventually?
Yeah, after Idaho before, so like I was in a tough spot where I didn't know if I wanted to continue playing, or at that point, because this is before the transfer portal was a thing or any of that. So I was kind of in a weird situation, because it was end of semester. Like I couldn't just go to another D1, and I couldn't really even talk to other schools at that point either, because of all the NCAA rules and stuff. So I was put in like a really weird position of, do I just want to, go home and finish the semester just online and then figure out if I want to play after that, or just go straight to, a JUCO and try to grind that out and figure out from there where to go. So.
And you end up going to Salt Lake Community College, and you mentioned in the Deep Blue you were offered even before the season started.
Yeah.
You did, like Spencer Johnson went through something similar, but he had to sort of earn his way into something. Did that give you the confidence to play any different, knowing, oh, BYU still wants me, like I'm still wanted at a high level? Yeah,
I think it definitely gave me some confidence going into that season, just, knowing that, I was still wanted by other schools, and just kind of helped me find out, like, yeah, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, like this is kind of who I am, and that's like was just, it's part of the path to get to BYU. So it also kind of helped me play more relaxed and not like, oh, I need to prove myself to these schools that, I'm worthy to go back to D1. So.
Yeah, I can imagine getting that before the season's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be all right.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. Now, and part of what's been so enjoyable about sort of the Deep Blue is humanizing athletes. I think we kind of act like once you get to a point of success, like everything's good. You're not dealing with anything anymore, which is not true. You're still dealing with different things or similar things. You're just sort of suppressing that in some way maybe, or overcoming it. What are you still kind of battling against to still be the leading rebounder in the country?
Yeah, I definitely, I get anxious before games, nervous, I think that's definitely normal. But I think also just trying to, deal with, everything outside of life too, your social life and, everything spiritual and mental and physical and all that stuff. Just trying to have a good balance and trying to have like a healthy balance. I feel like not trying to put too much into one thing. But I think, that's definitely something that a lot of, athletes deal with, is just trying to balance life. And then I think sometimes too, just having like time for just like myself, where I can kind of decompress and whatnot. And I think that's where the weight room comes in huge for me, just because that is kind of an outlet where I can relax and decompress, because, your mind's always going with, game plans and basketball and, what school assignments you got to get in.
Oh, by the way, school.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. So, yeah, but luckily, and with BYU having, all the resources we have around me, and having teammates that go through the same thing, and having great coaches to like call and, talk to all the time about really anything, has been such a big blessing here.
So, word of advice sounds like find a decompression thing that helps you get better at something you're good at already. Because the weight room being a decompression thing and not a sort of I don't want that.
Yeah.
That probably helps a ton, I'd imagine. Because for some people, I guess for me, I'm thinking, what's my decompression thing? Like watching TV or movies or reading a book. But it'd be helpful if I was like practicing broadcasting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, sometimes it's not the best decompress, because I want to go like hard, but my body like I'm exhausted or tired.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I can't really get the most out of it that I want at that moment. But I have to like be patient and be like I'm sore from practice and games and stuff. So
yeah. So it's not always like yay the weight room.
Yeah, because it's not.
Gotcha.
It always sometimes it's not the smartest thing for me to go if I'm not feeling good, but like that's what I want to do just because that is a decompression for me. But sometimes I gotta try to be smart about it. But
well, awesome. Thanks for coming in the studio, and thanks for doing the Deep Blue. I think people that haven't seen it will really enjoy it. And again, that's coming up later in the program. Thanks.
Yeah, they did great on it. Thank you.
Our thanks to Lauren Gustin. Massive game for the Cougars between 4th place BYU and 2nd place Portland, 9 Eastern on BYU TV and the app. Up next, to properly celebrate the anniversary of the Miracle on Ice, we're going to recap the biggest miracles in BYU sports history. You remember this one? This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
If you're looking to build your brand awareness and increase market share as BYU moves into the Big 12, this is the place, BYU Athletics. We can provide the tools you need to make sure your company is seen and heard. BYU Athletics is where you can align your products and services with loyal fans that cheer for our Cougars. And they can also help your business win. Learn more about what a partnership with BYU Athletics and your company will look like. After all, this is the place. Email sponsorship at byu.edu today.
Whether you want to rock your retirement on the court, on the snow, on the waves, or in the gym. At Mountain America, we're here to help you get things rolling. Learn more at macu.com/retirement. Mountain America, guiding you forward.
Here's the thing about BYU Sports Nation. It's a banner that unites fans all over the world. BYU TV and BYU Radio are all about bringing your family events and games live. On air, online, and on the free apps. It's the next best thing to being there, connecting your fandom with others across BYU Sports Nation. Download the apps and get exclusive access to analysis and interviews with players and coaches. BYU TV and BYU Radio, the place for all things Cougar sports. Tune in, join in. Make sure you follow BYU Sports Nation on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter.
He is Jarom. I am Spencer. You know what time it is. Let's whip it! Cougar Whip Around, presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
Spender, our favorite metric in the country is the luck rating by Ken Palm. BYU ranked 9th lowest in the country. Does this make you feel better or worse about this season?
It makes me feel worse about this season.
That BYU's unlucky?
BYU catch a break. One break. Can Aiden Mahaney miss that shot? Or Julian Strother miss that shot?
Can anybody miss a shot?
Just one of them.
Down the stretch by an opponent. Yeah.
Can we not foul Julian Strother down 2 at Gonzaga?
Yeah. I feel worse too. it's not great. No, I feel great. No, I feel bad. Yeah.
Could BYU not have lost to South Dakota and not gone down 20 in that game?
Don't pile on.
I know.
That horse is already dead.
I apologize.
Thank you.
Okay, Goose Fraba. Yes.
What?
All right. That's the word in anger management that Adam Sandler is told to use to calm down. Goose Fraba.
I'm going to use that one now. Nice.
Lauren Gustin is 23 rebounds away from beating BYU's single-season rebounding record set by the great Tina Gunn Robinson. Will she attain the 23rd rebound this week, and if so, when?
First half against Gonzaga. She's averaging 16 a game. So 7th rebound will be in the first half.
Okay, so
with 2:38 on the clock.
I was going to say, I figured out kind of when that should happen, and I'm saying with 4 minutes and 9 seconds left in the first half.
4:09
against Gonzaga.
You'll have a clean house.
So it'll be the second quarter. So 4:09 left in the second quarter against Gonzaga.
Oh, in the second quarter.
Yes.
Left in the second quarter.
Correct.
Yeah, mine's in the half, so it's the second quarter as well. We'll play close to the pin on that. Okay, Jamal Williams is in the running to make the Madden 2023 Ultimate Team. It's one of 98 players selected as the most outstanding NFL players. Should Jamal make this?
Yes, based on just his pure entertainment value. Come on.
Have him dance in the game?
Please, but he belongs on the ultimate team.
Vote for your boy.
And he should probably have an anime character made of himself.
Yeah. By the way, I
draw that.
Speaking of anime, I just started watching Attack on Titan.
Good.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
We need to talk to Jamal about this.
I watched because I was, feeling under the weather yesterday. I watched like 24 episodes in 2 days.
Awesome.
I've been going hard,
Are they
bro.
30 minutes apiece?
21.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great binge watch.
Why. I haven't talked to my kids at all last. Fend for yourselves. Thanks, Mark.
43 years ago today, the Miracle on Ice.
Oh,
amazing.
So good.
What's the biggest miracle in BYU sports history?
Okay, in a game, it's clearly 1980. We call it the Miracle Bowl, the comeback against SMU, of course. But to me, the number one is getting into a Power 5. We've wanted this forever, Spence. It is a miracle. We did it. Like, we're going to the Big 12. To me, that's the biggest miracle in BYU.
Wow, that's off the radar.
Yeah.
Okay, and one I was not thinking about because I'm thinking about,
Sure.
accomplishments in games, but that, yeah, it is miraculous in fashion, and we
amazing.
Celebrated it like it was miraculous.
Yes. By beating Utah the next
and
day.
then they get followed with the win. Okay, I love that take. I'm going to say there are three that come to mind. Yes, the Miracle Bowl. The Mangum Miracle has the word miracle in it, right? The game against Nebraska, amazing game right there. Mitch Matthews catches that. And then BYU beating Miami in 1990, that was miraculous in a fashion.
BYU was ranked 16th.
True,
People forget
but
this
Miami
fact.
was such a juggernaut.
Yeah.
Defending national champions. They finished number 3 that season.
Best win in BYU history by
It really is. Yeah. And then men's basketball against Gonzaga in 2017.
That's a one-and-done NIT team that beats the number 1 team in the country on the road.
I think BYU was a 16-point or an 18-point underdog going into that game.
BYU was down 18-2 in that game, by the way. You forget that.
And won the game by 8. That was amazing.
Overtime documented a game played on a fully carpeted court. How many times do you think you've played on a carpeted court in a church gym?
A lot. A lot.
That was one of your churches that way?
I'd probably say at least 10 or 15 times I've played on a carpeted gym, if not more.
Yeah, it's like 30 or 50 or something for me. I don't know. Carpeted gyms. Luckily, we got away with that. To me, that's an apostate basketball tradition. We have actual gyms now, which is great.
I've got some significant run burns or burn scars to show for it as well.
Knees, elbows. Ugh. Come on now.
Cow.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
Apostasy. Yeah.
Jackson Emery probably has played on a carpeted gym.
Heard of him.
He tweeted out an interesting take. He said, should the Jazz sign these BYU greats?
Well, he didn't say BYU. He said, why wouldn't the Jazz sign
these guys?
Yes,
okay, so not BYU. I was going to say Frank Jackson
and Sam Merrill. These are the guys we wish had gone to BYU.
Guy.
Yeah.
In our metaverse,
all the great members of the church come to BYU.
Should the Jazz sign any of those guys?
Well, they just did with Frank Jackson, reportedly to a 10-day. He says Sam Merrill, Eric Mika. Eric Mika is still in the game. Sam Merrill playing internationally. I can't remember where. By the way,
feels like
I saw
a
J.C. Carroll on Sunday at the All-Star game, by the way.
Utah State, great.
And he says Jimmer Fredette. Is Jimmer not playing anymore? He hasn't played for like a year and a half, almost 2 years.
He's taking it easy.
Yeah. And he can.
He's done well for himself.
He's not retired, though. But, yeah, they are with Frank. Like, in the pursuit of tanking for Wembanyama.
Victor Wembanyama?
Is that what he's saying? Yeah.
Tank for Victor?
Jazz are too good to get the number 1 pick, though.
I could see Eric signing a 10-day as well. A couple of Lone Peak guys.
Eric knows Danny Ainge from living in Boston as a kid.
Let's do it.
It hasn't happened yet.
Danny, sign Eric. No. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Andy Reid would.
Just sign all the BYU guys. Come on now. Listen to BYU baseball tonight as the Batcats take on the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana. 7 Eastern on the BYU radio app with Shep. Do you think he's had gumbo down there?
He has to have. Yes.
I would hope so.
Yes.
If not, don't come back.
He's a no carbs guy, though. Are there any carbs in gumbo?
Yeah, he is. No.
Are there any carbs in gumbo? I don't know.
No,
not really, right?
I don't think so.
It's just meat and protein and okay.
It's
We're gonna find out.
Delicious.
Compelling questions. Up next, Lauren Gustin.
Really?
We told you it's the Lauren Gustin show. She's on the cusp of rewriting history.
Mm-hmm.
Where did she get that crazy competitive edge from? This is BYU Sports Nation.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Maersk. your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
At BYU, we believe wholeheartedly in expanding joy, and that joy comes from learning and serving. Some of the best, most lasting learning happens when we serve, when we experience, when we connect in real, lasting ways. It's what we call inspiring learning. Learning that inspires us to create a better world, to do and be better. After all, light shared is the best kind of light.
Wrapping up in a Minky Couture luxurious blanket. Getting cozy with family and friends. A gift for everyone. Minky Couture, official luxury blanket of BYU Athletics.
My name is Spencer Finnegan. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. During my sophomore year, I got married to my sweetheart, Mary, and there's tons of unexpected expenses when it comes to marriage. We were looking for scholarships. I found the replenishment grant, and my local alumni chapter gave me a grant to help me focus in on school. I'm so excited to, now that I've graduated, give back to those students that are coming to BYU in the future.
This week, I'm heading to Long Beach, California to meet the Wackerman Nolte family.
Colby is our amazing puppy.
It's just hard to see people and animals left behind.
It's awesome. I mean, not many people take in these special needs guys, but in the end, they're the best ones.
We're worried about Colby's future if he doesn't get help.
He really, in a way, embodies resilience.
He should have energy to move, and he doesn't. He needs his fourth leg.
It feels like a miracle that somebody could give him a whole new lease on life.
Welcome back to BYU Sports Station live from Studio B. It is a Lauren Gustin special today, and she has earned it. She's also learned to scrap and claw her way to being in games with her very athletically gifted brothers, leading to a determination to become one of the best rebounds, if not the best rebounder, this BYU women's basketball program has ever seen, while requiring her the will to overcome some emotional challenges early on. This is Deep Blue with Lauren Gustin.
Lauren, to me, I have to go back to the beginning. Lauren was born the 10th month of the year, 10 pounds, 10 ounces. And when I held her in my hands, she was a perfect 10 to me. And to this day, she still is.
She was our oldest daughter, but she had two older brothers that she was always playing and trying to keep up with.
I always wanted to be able to play with them at a young age, but it took a process, and it was a grind to be able to prove that I could be able to play with them.
And finally, one day when her cousins all came over, there was an odd number of players, and they picked her to come out and play as well, and she had her opportunity to get on the court.
Scoring is you know, it's flashy. It's what you want growing up. It's what most players want throughout their entire career, and you know, she was able to find a spot in those games by rebounding.
And it meant a lot to her to be out there and to play and to prove herself as a player and as an athlete.
I committed to the University of Idaho during my junior year of high school, and at the time I was super excited and you know, looking forward to be able to go play college basketball, and so it was just stress-free, and I was able to, you know, enjoy my last years of high school just playing for a state championship.
We moved to Arizona. She was a junior, and she won state in Arizona, their team. We moved back to Utah as a senior, and then they won state. So I think that's a pretty cool accomplishment for her to be able to win state in 2 states. Who can say that, right?
After I had graduated, I had the whole summer to, you know, work and get ready for college basketball, which I was really excited about. I was super excited to be able to start a new chapter in my life and to be able to finally play college basketball. And
she got up there. We dropped her off the beginning of August. About 4 or 5 weeks into it, I could tell she was really not happy. She was struggling.
I lost a lot of love for the game of basketball. I was, you know, dreading practice. I was dreading weights. I was dreading everything that had to do with basketball itself, which was hard for me because I had loved playing the game, you know, my whole life.
When you're struggling mentally, it overflows into everything. So her studies were struggling. She was frustrated, and she was really wondering and doubting whether or not she had made the right choice.
So it was really weird and off to not be able to feel that passion and that drive for it anymore. And I was trying to find, at that point, really any way to be done playing the game.
I remember looking at a text from Lauren, and it said, I'm coming home. It took me by surprise a little bit. I said, are you sure? And, and I knew there'd been challenges there. And, I'm like, all these emotions are running through, you've made this commitment. You need to stay. And, it's not about what me as a father thinks. It's her and her mental health and her aspect of it and her perception of it. And so I just sent back a text and said, as long as you have a plan, I'm on board.
I definitely doubted myself after, leaving the D1 program because I didn't know if I was just strong enough to be able to play Division I. I ended up going to Salt Lake Community College. While I was at Slick, I think it was very eye-opening, and I was able to step back and breathe for a second and kind of figure out who I was again.
As they say, a stone becomes a gem through much pressure. And I saw the pressure that was on her, and it started to refine her with those sharp edges, so to say, maybe. It really was a blessing in a sense, how this all came together at that point in her life.
As soon as I actually was at Slick, before our first game, BYU called me up and offered me a scholarship. And just being able to hear that from a school so quickly, before I had even played a game, was good for my mental health and my confidence in general.
These little miracles started to occur. They were answers to prayers, her prayers, and our prayers as well. And we could see the Lord's hand in this work.
When Lauren got to BYU, she had to sit out a year because of the NCAA rules with transfers.
So those years of having to sit out and watch her brothers compete until she finally had an opportunity to get out and play was similar to when she came to BYU and had to sit out for a year and wait for her opportunity to earn it.
It really takes a certain mindset to be able to sit out a whole year and stay in shape, keep your eyes on the prize, and be able to put yourself in a position throughout that year and you can have success the following year.
Kind of like the phoenix rising up from the ashes, she was back.
What I'm most proud of with Lauren is her persistence. She's gone through some trials, as we all do, as athletes do, and she's worked hard.
A big part of Lauren having so much success with rebounding at the highest level and doing the dirty work is because she started from a very young age, and she found success at it, and she found value in it, and she stuck with it all the way till now, all these years later.
My journey through basketball was different, but I think that was all part of God's plan and his timing, because, if I didn't go to University of Idaho and then Slick, I don't think that I would be the same player that I am today. It's all part of your plan, and it's all part of the journey.
Incredible story from Lauren Gustin. You can watch BYU's All-American candidate tomorrow in a huge game against second-place Portland, the fourth-place Cougars, 9 Eastern, 7 Mountain on BYU TV and the BYU TV app. Still on the way. And let me channel my inner 1980 Al Michaels here. Do you believe in the Rising Shoutout? Yes! This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Introducing the truck for adventure. The all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier doesn't compromise on power or comfort. This midsize truck was redesigned to incorporate the latest technology and designs for safety, comfort, and convenience. Plus, with up to 6,700 pounds of towing capacity and best-in-class horsepower, it's rugged enough for adventure and still safe enough to transport all your favorite people. Where's your new Frontier? You'll find it at Tim Dowling Nissan Southtown and South Jordan.
home is just about to get a whole lot happier.
So you've been living with no furniture for about 2 months. Well, we're about to change that for you.
Watch as helpful folks lend a hand to those in need. See them refurbish and replenish homes all over the world.
Caitlin left her house when she was 13, and now she's finally home.
With all kinds of shows to explore on the BYU TV app, you're sure to find loads your family can watch together. Stream them all for free.
BYU men's hoops dreams are flying high. But before hitting the hardwoods of the Big 12, they're shooting to leave their royal blue imprint on the courts of the WCC. Join us for BYU Sports Nation Game Day as we chatted up with Coach Pope on the team's growth, dive deep into player profiles, and keep it real on the Cougs' big dance chances. It's time to raise the spirited Y banner on our final tour of the WCC. BYU Sports Nation Game Day. Tune in, join us.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
BYU Sports Nation's on demand. Download the free BYU TV and BYU Radio apps to listen to the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review.
Welcome back with our question of the day based on Bill Connolly of ESPN's SP Plus projections.
Nice Al Michaels, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. That was terrible. Is BYU better than a 5-win football team next season?
What does our fan base think? Say yes.
Our elite voice of the day, presented by PAX Healthcare Elevated. Clyde Livingston on Twitter says, no. Actually, he says, does Bill Connolly know that BYU has never lost a regular season Big 12 conference game?
Never, ever, ever. And never will until they do.
Hashtag BYUSN. Today's Rise and Shout Out, presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
We got Bumblebee as the A1 today. The Miracle on Ice. What a moment, obviously, for the United States when we were both not born. But that's one of the greatest upsets in history. We talked about our upsets in BYU history. The sports are great that way because when you think you have no shot and you have one opportunity, as Miles Mathers once said, then yes, you can come up with an upset. And BYU's had several of these historically.
How cool is it that the Miracle on Ice and the Miracle Bowl occurred in the same calendar year?
Oh, I could forget it.
How about that?
Yeah, I didn't
Both
think
in
about that.
1980.
Yes!
Yeah. That'll help with the Al Michaels excitement. Our thanks to today's guest, Lauren Gustin. She's about to break another record, I'm pretty sure.
Breaking opponents' wills as well, thanks to Dennis, for nothing.
For Jarom, I'm Spencer. Shout out to Tina Gunn Robinson. We'll see you in about 23 hours. Go Cougs.
Yes!